The last thing you expect when you're lying on a hospital gurney, half gone from sedation, is to hear your own brother's voice selling you out. But there he was, standing 3 feet away from my body like I was already a problem to be managed, like I was already gone. She has no spouse, no children. I am the next of kin, and I am authorizing the procedure. I couldn't scream. I couldn't sit up. My body felt like it was buried under wet concrete. But something in my brain, some last desperate thread of survival, fired. And I grabbed the doctor's wrist. I held on with everything I had left. Because what my brother didn't know was that I had never been as helpless as he needed me to be. And the moment I could speak again, his entire carefully constructed life was going to come apart at the seams. They sedate the body. They cannot sedate the mind. Before we go any further, drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. And if you've ever had a family member who smiled at your face while planning your destruction, hit subscribe, because the story was made for you. My name is Renee. I'm 34 years old, I'm a nurse, and I know exactly how hospitals work. I know the language, the hierarchy, the paperwork. I know what next of kin authorization means and exactly when it applies. Which is why, when I heard my brother Marcus say those words, I understood immediately, in the fog, in the fear, in the sedation, what he was actually doing. Let me back up. 3 weeks before that hospital room, I had been diagnosed with a benign ovarian cyst. Uncomfortable, not dangerous, but my gynecologist recommended a laparoscopic procedure to remove it before it grew. Routine. Outpatient. I wasn't afraid. I'm a nurse. I've assisted on procedures like this dozens of times. I made one mistake. I told my mother. My mother told Marcus. And Marcus, my 38-year-old brother who has borrowed money from me 7 times in 4 years and paid back exactly $0, Marcus suddenly became very, very interested in my health. See, what most people didn't know, what I had never announced publicly because it wasn't their business, was that 6 months earlier, our grandmother Dolores had passed away, and in her will, she had left me her house. Not split between the family. Not divided. Mine. A 3-bedroom home in a quiet suburb worth, at the time of her death, just under $380,000. Grandma Dolores had watched our family dynamics for decades. She saw how my parents poured everything into Marcus, the college tuition, the bail money twice, the down payment on an apartment he eventually got evicted from anyway. She watched me work double shifts through nursing school while my parents told me they were too stretched to help. She never forgot. And when she died, she made sure I didn't get left behind again. The will had been settled. The deed was already transferred into my name. The house was mine, legally and completely. But Marcus had been furious since the reading. He'd spent weeks calling relatives, calling my parents, trying to frame it as unfair, as grandmother being manipulated, as some kind of mistake that needed correcting. Nobody with legal authority agreed with him, so he'd gone quiet. I thought that meant he'd accepted it. I was wrong. He hadn't accepted anything. He'd just changed strategy. What I didn't know yet, what I was about to piece together from a hospital gurney with sedative in my bloodstream, was that Marcus had spent those quiet weeks doing research. Cold, calculated research. And what he'd found was a legal pressure point he thought he could exploit. Here is what Marcus had discovered. And what he thought was his winning move. In some medical situations, when a patient is incapacitated and has no spouse, no children, and no documented healthcare proxy on file, the next of kin, typically a sibling or parent, can step in to make certain decisions. It's a real legal mechanism. It exists to protect people. Marcus had found a surgeon, not my gynecologist, a different one, and he had scheduled a separate consultation without my knowledge to discuss a more extensive procedure, one that would have made me unable to have children. Permanently. Why would that matter to him? Because buried in Grandma Dolores's will was a single conditional clause that his lawyer had flagged. A clause that said if I died without a direct heir, the property would revert back into the family estate, which Marcus, as the eldest surviving grandchild, could then petition to control. He wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to make sure I could never produce an heir. So that if anything ever happened to me, naturally, eventually, decades from now, that house would come back to him. He had found a surgeon willing to blur ethical lines. He had shown up to my procedure with forged paperwork, listing himself as my healthcare proxy. And he had waited until the sedation hit before making his move, banking on the fact that I would wake up altered, confused, and that by the time I understood what had happened, it would already be done. What he didn't account for, what he could not have planned for, was that I metabolized sedatives faster than average. It's documented in my own medical chart. I've always come out of anesthesia quicker than expected. Every anesthesiologist I've ever worked with flags it. The one assigned to me that morning had read my chart. Marcus had not. So when he leaned over to that surgeon and said those words, "She has no spouse, no children, I am the next of kin, and I'm authorizing the procedure," I was already 40% back. Enough to hear. Enough to understand, not enough to speak, but enough to grab. The doctor felt my grip and stopped cold. He looked at my face. My eyes weren't fully open, but my fingers were locked around his wrist with everything I had. He leaned down. He said quietly, "Miss Renee, can you hear me?" I moved my lips. It took 3 tries. But I got it out. No consent. Not him. That was enough. The surgeon stepped back, called for a pause. Marcus started talking fast, explaining, performing, trying to recover. But the anesthesiologist had already flagged the chart discrepancy. The forged proxy document didn't match the one on file with my primary care physician. Within 20 minutes, hospital security was involved. Within an hour, my own gynecologist had been contacted and was on her way in. I had the original procedure, the routine one, my procedure, completed safely that afternoon. Marcus was removed from the building. But I wasn't done. I spent the next 6 weeks recovering and building a case so airtight it had no air left inside it. I got copies of every document Marcus had submitted. I had a forensic document examiner confirm the forgery in writing. I hired an attorney who specialized in medical fraud and elder financial law. We filed a criminal complaint for medical fraud, filing forged legal documents, and attempted unauthorized medical decision-making. The civil suit came next. Because beyond the criminal exposure, what Marcus had attempted was provably connected to financial motive. The will, the clause, the house. My attorney laid it out in front of a judge like a blueprint. Marcus lost. On every count. He was ordered to pay my legal fees. He received 18 months probation and a permanent mark on his record that would follow him into every background check for the rest of his life. The surgeon who had cooperated with him lost his hospital privileges and is currently under review by the state medical board. My parents called me when the verdict came through. My mother cried. My father said Marcus had made a terrible mistake and that family needed to find a way to heal. I let them finish. Then I told them, calmly, without raising my voice, that I had already contacted an estate attorney to add an additional protection clause to my property deed, that I had updated every legal document I owned with a professional healthcare proxy who was not related to me by blood, and that I would be taking an indefinite break from contact with anyone in that family who had known what Marcus was planning and said nothing. My mother started to respond. I hung up. The house is still mine. It will stay mine. And every morning I wake up in it, I think about the fact that the only reason Marcus's plan failed, the only reason, is that he forgot one thing. He forgot I was still in the room. They sedate the body. They cannot sedate the woman who built herself from nothing, while her family bet against her. If this story hit different, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe. Justice always finds a way